one of the things we were talking about this morning during breakfast was that movie American Factory, which we've both seen. So if you guys haven't seen this movie, it's in America. If you're here in the US, it's on Netflix, and I'm sure you can find it elsewhere. But it's a really good documentary, and it shows some interesting cultural differences between the US and China especially. And it's about a wealthy who's that?
Mushroom just
It's about a wealthy Chinese billionaire entrepreneur who starts a factory producing glass for windshields in the United States with something like 80% American workers and 20% Chinese workers. Cultural differences between them and the issues that happen between the management and the workers. Then they go over to China and they look at the Chinese factories. So you saw that movie. I'm curious about as from the Chinese perspective, from your perspective, how did that movie make you feel, and what were your takeaways from the movie?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting movie. One thing is that that movie made me reflect like how the real situation like happening in China now. So one thing, if you guys didn't watch the movie, you definitely need to watch it.
You guys have to watch it. It's really good.
And,
American Factory.
Produced
by Barack Obama.
So yeah, I mean that's a cool movie. It's about like make me to think like, hey, I'm working in a Chinese company, and the movie reflects some facts that's going on in Chinese companies. Like they want everybody just on the same direction and focus on one thing. But
you mean in the Chinese company?
In a Chinese company, but in the United States, like the people employees who are as Americans. They have a really strong sense about individuality.
They
really want to fight for their own rights and stuff. They want to get involved with the labor unions and stuff, right?
They wanted to start a labor union,
And so a lot of conflicts and the cultural differences. It's pretty interesting to see the stuff going on, the plates, you know.
Did you feel it was fair that the documentary filmmakers represented each side fairly? Did you feel that one side
with a bias?
Yeah, or with a bias? Did you think it was fair? And do you think that one side maybe was right and one side was wrong?
No, I think it's pretty fair. I just show in a very objective way, like to reflect the truth. So I think it's pretty fair.
Do you think that is actually... Well, the thing that stuck out to me is they go to China and maybe we should explain the whole situation. So there are issues with efficiency in the factory that they're starting in the United States. And the person who's starting it, this wealthy man who's starting this factory is kind of upset about the efficiency issues in the factory. And so he sends some of the management over to China to see another one of the factories that he runs. And their minds are blown. The Americans see how everything is done quickly. Everything is done at a very high quality standard. People are working 6 days a week. Nobody is complaining. In the morning, they all line up and they do they do all this stuff, and everyone is
like a military.
It looks like the military, and the Americans are just what? Their minds are blown.
About the part that for the Spring Festival party part.
Yeah.
Annual gatherings and stuff, and it was like they were completely shocked. Like how the people perform on the stage because they cannot understand Chinese, right? So they got zero understanding what they were trying to express. They were shocked.
But no, the guy who came from the American factory started crying because
Did he cry?
Yeah, he started crying because he thought he was overwhelmed by the unity of the two companies working within one one company but two countries, and seeing sort of this show that's being put on in part for the Americans to get to sort of understand something about culture. I mean, it wasn't only for them, obviously, but I think he was sort of overwhelmed by the experience, and he said, "We're one." That's what he said. He was crying. "We're one. We're one."
Yeah,
he was
that's
crying.
what I remember, but I didn't remember he cried.
He was crying.
He was crying?
Well, maybe it was a single tear that came down his face. It might have just been one.
Probably happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, I remember the words from him. He was saying like, we are in the one world.
Yeah.
But also it's a huge diversity.
Yeah.
That's a lot of difference between these two countries. So yeah,
We have to
I mean, what he
accept
was
the
trying to-
differences and
y-
try
yeah,
to
you
work
need
toward a common
accept the-
goal.
The differences and bring this stuff together.
You're never going to, even with people you know, your friends, you're never going to achieve 100% agreement on anything.
Yeah.
You're never going to think exactly the same way. And you're never going to think that what the other person does is completely acceptable, even if they're from your own country, let alone another country. So I think the lesson from that movie is you just have to accept that that's the way it is and then try to learn from it and try to appreciate that to them, looking at you, you are just as unusual, just as weird. The things that popped out to me are, number one, so the differences in work style. Americans tend to, as you said, have a strong sense of individuality, and they want to focus on their rights and being protected. And they also, very importantly, value their free time above anything else. So in other words, don't ask me to work more than 40 hours a week. And I'm just here to make money, and I don't have, my emotions are not really in this that much. I'm here to make money. And that's about it. And if you take steps beyond that, I'm going to feel like you're trying to steal something from me, and I have to do something about it. And for that reason, I think the Americans, a lot of them were leaving or getting upset because they couldn't deal with the Chinese company. They felt the management was being a little too strict, asking too much, and asking them to do things that they weren't okay with, like work more hours, for example. So then they decided to start a union. But the Chinese management didn't want them to start a union because then a union has a lot of power. They can collectively bargain and get higher wages and things like that. So the company gave them all $2 an hour more, but that didn't make them happy because they wanted to have a union. That's then what I think is the most ironic thing about the movie. The ironic thing about it is here you have Americans who are very individual trying to become collective. They're trying to form a collective group, which is what you think of as sort of a Chinese thing, the whole collective, the group, the whole, to get something done. And then you have this Chinese guy who is acting like a, let's say, traditional American wealthy businessman, billionaire. You can't form a union. I'm going to pay you this much money, and that's it. So it was very ironic to me that this super rich guy was behaving more like what we think of as the American capitalist, and the Americans were trying to form a group in a very sort of socialist Chinese way to protect themselves from him.
Yeah.
It's very ironic.
Yeah.
Which means money is the same everywhere.
Is the money? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're having successful business now, right?
I think it's
happening
going
where?
Dayton, Ohio, which is
Okay.
where I'm from.
They're
I'm not
having-
from Dayton, but I'm from Ohio.
Yeah, I think they're having business pretty well.
Yeah, the business is going well, which is interesting. It's very interesting to see. And then on the Chinese side, I really appreciated how fairly they just showed it as it is. That the efficiency comes from thinking a little bit less of yourself and thinking a little bit more of what am I part of. And if I think about what am I part of, then I'm willing to sacrifice a couple things for the greater good, which is this company's success, putting out a good product, which I think is something that Americans can learn from China.
Yeah.
How to be more efficient, how to understand what the greater good, how to see yourself as part of something rather than me, what can I get,
Yeah.
which is a little more selfish.
Yeah.
And I think the film was pretty unbiased and pretty fair.
Yeah,
That overall
I
is good.
realized this the detail here, that something that I'm not judging here, but one thing is that the Chinese company brought the business there because a lot of people lost the job because previously the location was for Ford, right?
It was a GM factory, yeah.
And a lot of people lost the job because bankrupt the problem of the previous factory.
Yes, yeah.
And the Chinese people brought the business there, and they're trying to hire the local people and provide the working opportunities, which means that they can get money.
Sure.
And at the very beginning, they were happy that, oh, I got the chance again. I can work again. They were happy in the very beginning.
It was that
and
lady who was
then-
living in her sister's
yeah,
basement.
And then after, I don't know, maybe a couple of months, she started like to complaining like it's not fair, like working a lot, the salary is not well paid, and start like all kinds of then it was like when I was watching it, the thing is in China, like when you feel like, for example, when you regain something that you that you lost previously, and you're gonna feel grateful, that you're gonna feel, I should cherish the opportunity.
Yeah.
I should not like to bring other problems or troubles here because I'm so afraid that I'm gonna lose it again. So it was kind of in my mind like, hey, why the women want to do this stuff like this?
Right.
And then and it came back to me like, hey, maybe it's just the cultural difference. That's in my mind.
Well, what would be the so what would be the lady worked at the GM factory. The GM factory closed. She lost her job. She had to sell her house, move into her sister's basement, and have a tiny room. Then she got hired again
and got
from the new factory, and then she got her own apartment, and she was making a smaller salary, but she was still making a much better salary than she was making previously.
Yeah.
$14 an hour, something?
$15
an hour. Which is livable. You can live on. It's not a lot, but you can live on that. And then she didn't have much good to say about the working situation.
Yeah.
And I think she was trying to join the union movement.
So
what would be the Chinese way of looking at that then?
Well, I mean, since you regain the chance, you get the new opportunity that you gonna cherish, that you're gonna feel graceful.
Yeah.
And you're gonna work really hard, Yeah. So you're not gonna bring a lot of complaints and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can understand. I can understand it from both sides, because you only live one life, and so you also want to try to get as much as you can in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
The last thing was very interesting is that finally none of it matters because robots are coming. At the end of the movie, they walk through the factory. Robot. There were no people around. They got rid of 30% of the staff, I think, something like that. So the real conclusion of the movie, which is only a little bit there, is this is all of these jobs will go away because of robots, because of automation. Yeah.
That happened by the end of the movie, right?
Yeah, that's what they
showed. But one thing that I noticed also, since one of the management member, he was showing around the big boss about the robot stuff and
we call that automation as well.
Automation. That all the employees here are going to be replaced by the machines and stuff. He was using Chinese, and all the American employees were working there, so because they cannot understand Chinese, so they didn't know they're going to be replaced by machine.
Yes.
So it was kind of a really cruel in a certain way. It's kind of, I'm talking something bad on you, but in some other language.
Well, they're not saying bad things about you. They're just saying what's going to happen.
But he was complaining that they were working slowly.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So I was like, maybe you. Well, that hurts.
Do you and Mushroom say difficult things in Chinese that I don't understand when we're doing?
No, we didn't.
Mean things about me that I don't understand.
I always get really decent attitude on you.
Oh yeah.
Always.
Thanks, buddy.
My compliments.
I appreciate it.